Concluding thoughts. Historical considerations. As one of the first major theologians to confront what he called a heresy, John believed that it was his duty to protect believers from what he viewed as false beliefs. Therefore, he took it upon himself to summarize the preceding 7 centuries of Orthodox Christian faith in order to provide a theological foundation for Christians living among the Muslims. He also developed 2 works, The Heresy of the Ismailites and the Disputation between a Christian and a Saracen, in order to warn Christians of the dangers of the new beliefs, to demonstrate the rational basis of Christianity, and to provide a model for refuting the challenges of Islam. Through this study, we gain a deeper appreciation of the historical and apologetical nature of one of the first arguments on the Trinity between a Christian theologian and his Muslim opponents. The background on John's life helped to establish his key position as both a theologian and apologist, serving in an important civil servant role in the court of the Caliph, which qualified him to give a witness testimony of the historical and theological developments of Islam. He knew the early developmental phase of Islamic politics and theology firsthand. He knew Arabic. He held a position of authority and respect. He interacted with both the civil and religious spheres of his day, and he developed an apologetic approach to Islam that was copied and adapted for centuries after his death. The biographical material on John of Damascus may be minimal, but through the substantiated historical evidence, together with the logical conclusions based on the internal and external evidence of writings during that time, as well as the hagiographical information of John's life, education, and accomplishments, we can establish that John was employed in a key position as chief financial officer in the Umayyad Empire, served as a priest and monk in the Melkite tradition, and was responsible for writing at least 2 treatises on Islam and other significant doctrinal and liturgical works for the Church. Thus, John's position, intelligence, and faith uniquely qualified him for his assessment of Islam. The material on the Islamic context of John's time highlighted the historical controversies facing him. It is necessary to understand the historical and theological context of the first century of Islam in order to better evaluate the historicity of John's critique of the religion of Islam. Like John, early witnesses provided a window into the development of the heresy of the Ismailites, as well as examples of the responses of the various Christian groups displaced by the conquest. These non-Muslim voices are very significant, not only in that they give us a literary connection back to the beginning of the conquest in 630s, but also in that they provide an outsider's critical view of events and developments within the religion that has become Islam. Some of the conclusions formed from these accounts are very helpful in recreating the social, religious, and intellectual environment of John's time. For example, there were no written Islamic accounts in Arabic of Muhammad or the beliefs of the Muslims in the 7th century, other than the words etched on the dome of rock AD 691 and some Arab coins AD 686. From the testimony of the non-Muslims, references to a prophet were generalist and actually supported a renegade leader of a new monotheistic religion similar to the forms of heterodoxical Judaism and Christianity found in that area. An overview of the Islamic development of theology aided in providing a theological context for John's defense of Christian doctrine against what he viewed as heresy. The early Muslims were started with issues regarding faith versus works, free will versus predestination, and the uncreated nature of the Quran. These doctrines were not hammered out in a vacuum, but rather in the midst of a predominantly Christian milieu, just as apologetics was used to forge Christian doctrines such as the Trinity. Evidence suggests it was also employed in the development of the early Islamic doctrines, as Christians and Jews critiqued the Quran and argued against Muslim theological viewpoints. Muslim scholars devised ways to counter the opponents' belief and strengthen their own views. Muslim theologians also had to suppress heretical ideas within their own fold. For this crucible of controversy, Orthodox Muslim theology was forced and defended. These theological controversies challenged the existing religions in the area and forced Christian theologians like John of Damascus to recontextualize these doctrinal issues that were under fire, such as the Trinity and the deity of Christ. Writing of John of Damascus on Islam. John's apologetic approach in his major works on Islam, the heresy of the Ismailites and the disputation between a Christian and a Saracen, was analyzed in order to explore John's arguments against Islam's rejection of the deity of Christ and the doctrine of the Trinity. These treatises were also utilized to explore the writing of Christian theology in an Islamic context, especially the relationship between the expression of orthodox teaching on the Trinity and the apologetic process of defending as well as commending the Trinity to Muslims. John's work in recontextualizing the doctrine of the Trinity in his defense of Christianity against Islam was significant for his own time, and it also had far-reaching effects on his successors. He summarized Christian doctrine systematically for his day, based on prior work done by theologians who were also apologists. He was also the first major theologian to engage in a written apologetic with Islam, two works specifically crafted into defend Christianity against what he referred to as the heresy of the Ismailites. In this role, he modeled for us a way that the apologetic process engaged doctrine. John's teaching on the Trinity revealed the standard of orthodoxy at this stage in the church development. His contentions with Islam can therefore show the importance of how Trinitarian doctrine developed through the previous councils and the theological writings up through the challenge of this new threat facing the church. One of the significant conclusions reached in this book was that the evidence supported John as the author of the heresy of the Ismailites, and that it was probably written in the 3rd or 4th decade of the 8th century. John had a clear to limited knowledge of the writing of Saracens as well as of Muhammad. He knew parts of the Quran, Surah 2, 3, 4, and 5, and he made references to a book not present in the Quran, the supposed Surah on the sea camel. She called Muhammad the first prophet and did not consider Muhammad the religious model to emulate. John also understood that the core beliefs of Christianity, the doctrine of the Trinity and the deity of Christ, were strongly opposed by the Muslims. Throughout his dialogues, John raised very real questions and attempted to give real theological answers. John's concern was to equip his fellow Christians with an understanding of the Muslim belief system and provide a ready defense of the Christian faith. The authenticity and authorship issues of the disputation between a Christian and a Saracen helped determine the importance of this work in making appropriate assessments of the development of Islam at this time. Though Cotter does not believe firm authorship by John of Damascus can be assigned to the disputation between a number of variant forms, this book has found that the best explanation is that the various transmissions may have been assembled from a composite text derived from John's written and oral dialogues. A careful examination of the different formats suggests that the original order can be reconstructed, and it supports John's authorship as well. If this work is truly from John, then we have a description of what the theological arguments between the Christians and the Saracens consisted of in the middle of the 8th century. The analysis of John's disputation between a Christian and a Saracen also revealed several significant things about John's association with the development of Islam. First of all, the comparison between John's theological work, orthodox faith, and the disputation between a Christian and a Saracen confirms many similarities in style, content, and word usage. This gives strong support to the view that the person who wrote the disputation between a Christian and a Saracen probably also wrote orthodox faith. Secondly, the dialogues that John of Damascus was an astute observer of the transformations that were taking place in his culture. More than that, he understood the polemical points of disagreement between accepted Christian doctrine and what he viewed as the aberrant theology of the Saracens. She gave an accurate analysis of mid-8th century Islamic theology, and his representation of Christian Orthodox faith became the standard for centuries to come. The tone of the dialogues also showed that he was more concerned with Christians understanding their own beliefs in contradistinction to what he called heresies of the Saracens than with reaching a point of reconciliation with his opponents. This was to become the precedent for centuries of apologists to come. The doctrines of the Trinity and the deity of Christ found in John's major theological treatise, the Orthodox faith, were specifically examined because these are crucial theological issues in Christianity, and they were the primary doctrines attacked by theological pronouncements of Islam. These were also issues that were clearly read in the apologetic writings of John of Damascus as well as his successors, as we have seen John's treatise, Heresy of the Ismailites, and also in his set of dialogues making up the disputation between the Christian and the Saracen. The belief in the triune God was one of the main points of controversy between the Christians in Syria and the Islamic rulers. It is possible that the development of John's apologetic approach was based on his understanding of Orthodox theology, and that both of these aspects of his work were intended to result of his response to the growth of Islamic theology and hegemony. John's view of the Trinity, as represented in his theological work Orthodox faith, was then compared to his defense of the Trinity against Islam in the heresy of the Ismailites and the disputation between the Christian and the Saracen. Not only were common themes detailed, but it was shown that the similar wording was also employed. These same themes were also developed in John's polemical writings against non-Muslim beliefs such as Manichaeism, which was a Gnostic heresy, as well as Monophysitism and Nestorianism, which were considered to be Christological heresies. These proxy arguments may have enabled John to address the Muslim challenges while remaining under the cover of critiquing a local heresy or a general religious dispute. In addition, the overlapping themes suggest that John of Damascus' apologetic integration with Islamic theology, as well as non-Muslim heretical views, molded the way he presented the Orthodox doctrine of the Trinity, and is found in his Orthodox faith. In turn, his Orthodox views on the Trinity came from a number of Christian theologians from the past, were further developed through the controversies facing Christians in the time of John, and in the onset of the stand by which new heresies, such as the beliefs of John of this marriage, were judged. The apologetic approaches of those who followed John were used to critique new heresies by providing counter-arguments based on the theological formulations developed by prior systematic theology, as is found in John's orthodox faith. The development of John's apologetic approach to Islam. The development of John's apologetic approach was explored as an extension of his theology, first to instruct Christians in orthodox beliefs, and second, to provide a model for defending their beliefs by refuting the false doctrine of orthodoxy. The focus on the task of apologetics involving preparation, defense, and refutation was important because these areas was correlative with the development of the Trinity in a formative stages preceding John of Damascus. It is possible that the development of John's apologetic approach was based on his understanding of orthodox theology, and that both aspects of his work were intended to the result of response to the growth of Islamic theology and hegemony. John's apologetic model was further developed as a way of supporting his views that Christianity was the true faith and therefore superior to what he believed was the heresy of Islam. Finally, John's apologetic legacy was explored in order to reveal the success of his model to the further development of his ideas and methods by his successors. As the Trinitarian statements of three of John's successors were analyzed and then compared with John's writings, a number of similar ideas and practices that may have come through the knowledge of the writings of John of Damascus were highlighted. Prominent among these views was that the Word and Spirit had to have been eternally with their Father, otherwise there would have been a time when God would not have had his Word and Spirit. These successors also made use of analogies for the Trinity, which are found in John's writings. These patterns of thought and parallel arguments strongly suggest that while John's apologetic approach was based on a Greek philosophical model and Chalcedonian beliefs, his successors took parts of John's method and further contextualized it for the Muslim mindset. They built their model on answering questions from the Quran rather than merely defending doctrine, and the reasoning was founded upon kalam philosophical constructs. Still, both John of Damascus and his successors shared the same overarching goals in their respective apologetic approaches: to instruct Christians in doctrine, to prepare them to defend their beliefs, and to teach them how to refute error. Certainly, John of Damascus was one of the most Christian voices in the discussions taking place during the first half of the 8th century between Christians and Muslims. In the end, this simple monk and priest provide a window into the development of Muslim theological ideas of this time. In addition, John's writings on Islam, especially his explanation and defense of the Trinity, provided a deep appreciation of the historical and apologetical nature of the first arguments on the Trinity between the Christian theologian and the Muslims.